At his mother's Sunday brunch, my husband Ethan called me too unstable to be trusted with a baby, while I was still healing from emergency surgery caused by a pregnancy I had never agreed to risk. He expected everyone to look at me with pity. Instead, his sister Mara set down the cake knife and asked why he had been carrying my birth control case before I got sick. That was the first crack in the life he had built around my silence. 3 months earlier, I still believed my marriage was difficult, not dangerous. I was 31, a speech therapist at a public elementary school, and I spent my days helping children say words adults had told them were too hard. I loved children. Ethan knew that. He used it whenever I said I was not ready to have one. "You're so good with other people's kids," he would say, as if my job were a promise my body had made to him. I had one clear boundary in our marriage: no baby for at least 2 years. I wanted to finish my clinical certification, pay down the last of my student loans, and stop feeling as if every decision in my life needed approval from someone louder than me. Ethan agreed before the wedding. He said he admired women who knew their own minds. After the wedding, he started calling that same mind fear. The first time he made my birth control sound selfish, we were standing at the kitchen counter on a Tuesday night. I was filling my little blue pill case for the week. It was cheap plastic, with 7 snap lids and a crack over Thursday from the time I had dropped it in the school parking lot. Ethan leaned against the counter and watched me press each pill into its square. "That thing runs our marriage," he said. I thought he was teasing. "No," I said. "Communication does." He smiled as if I had been cute, not clear. That week, his younger brother Colin announced that his wife, Tessa, was pregnant with twins. Beverly cried, opened champagne for everyone else, and spent the rest of dinner talking about matching grandchildren. On the drive home, Ethan said, "Maybe an accident is what you need." I told him there would be no accident because I took my medication at the same time every morning. He stared through the windshield and said, "You make everything sound like a contract." Over the next 6 weeks, the pressure became routine. Ethan asked whether my certification mattered more than our family. He sent me nursery pictures during work. He told Beverly I was coming around when I had said nothing of the kind. Then one Monday morning, I noticed the pills in my blue case looked slightly different. The usual tablets had a tiny stamped code. These were plain and a little chalkier. Ethan said the pharmacy had probably changed manufacturers and accused me of checking things until I invented danger. I wanted to call the pharmacist, but a student had a speech evaluation that morning. I was late, and Ethan had trained me to treat my own alarm as an inconvenience. I swallowed the pill. 5 weeks later, I was pregnant. Ethan cried with happiness before I had even finished saying I was scared. He kept telling me the pregnancy was proof that life knew better than I did. I stopped taking the tablets as soon as the test turned positive, but by then the pills had already failed me for weeks, and I still did not understand why. The pain began at school on a Thursday afternoon. By the time the ambulance reached the hospital, I was bleeding internally from an ectopic pregnancy. Before surgery, a nurse asked for my medications, and Ethan handed her the blue case before I could reach it. A hospital pharmacist checked the remaining tablets and found that they were not my prescribed birth control. They were over-the-counter folic acid tablets with a different imprint. The nurse sealed the remaining tablets in a medication bag, documented the mismatch, and returned the empty blue case with my belongings. Ethan told everyone I must have mixed them up while stressed. I was discharged 3 days later with abdominal stitches, an orange bottle of pain medication, and a note instructing me not to drive. Beverly insisted on Sunday brunch because, in her words, the family needed to heal together. Mara picked me up. Ethan arrived separately and spent the first 20 minutes telling everyone how exhausted he was from managing my confusion. Then, when I said the hospital had found the wrong pills in my case, he smiled at his mother and called me too unstable to be trusted with a baby. Mara looked from him to the cracked blue case in my hand, set down the cake knife, and asked, "Then why did that case fall out of your jacket 2 weeks before her surgery?" The whole table went quiet in a way that did not feel polite. Beverly's fork stopped halfway to her plate. Colin looked at the blue case in my hand, then at Ethan, as if his brain had reached for a normal excuse and found nothing there. Ethan recovered first. He always did. He gave Mara a soft, wounded laugh and said, "Please don't feed into this. Emily was forgetting doses. I was helping her." It was a smarter lie than calling me selfish. Now he made himself my caretaker, the patient husband quietly managing a confused wife. I felt the trap change shape at Beverly's brunch table. If I got angry, I looked unstable. If I stayed quiet, his version stood. If I cried, he could call it hormones, grief, surgery, anything except what he had done. I set the empty blue case beside Beverly's white serving plate and kept my hands flat on the table. I never asked him to manage my medication, I said. Ethan turned toward his mother, not toward me. Mom. She was taking pills at random. I found them loose in her work bag. I didn't want her hurting herself. Beverly's expression changed at the word hurting. She no longer heard tampering. She heard crisis. Ethan saw that and pressed harder. She just had surgery. She shouldn't be interrogated at a table. Mara stayed beside the cake stand. The knife still pointed safely toward the floor. You told me it was your allergy case, she said. It fell out of your pocket in the garage, and when I recognized the crack, you said Emily was dramatic about little things, so you kept it with you. Ethan's jaw tightened for half a second. Not guilt. Calculation. He chose insult wrapped as concern. Mara, you hear half a sentence and build a courthouse around it. Then he reached for my elbow. Not hard enough for anyone to call it force. Just enough to remind me that he expected my body to obey before my mouth could finish. Come on, we're leaving. Pain pulled low across my stomach when I held myself still, but I did not move. I looked at his fingers on my arm and said, let go. Mara stepped closer, and Ethan released me before she reached the chair. He could still lie, but he could no longer perform being gentle while holding me in place. Beverly put both palms on the table. Everyone needs to calm down. She looked at me when she said it, not him. That hurt more than I expected. I had spent years bringing flowers to this house, clearing plates without being asked, remembering which cousin hated onions. In the one moment I needed her to look at the man who had touched my medication, she looked at the woman recovering from the damage. Ethan had counted on that family reflex. Protect the man who sounded reasonable, manage the woman who made the room uncomfortable. I opened the cracked Thursday lid with my thumb. I filled this every Sunday night, I said. Same order. Same place in the bathroom cabinet. The hospital pharmacist documented that the pills left inside were not my prescription. I looked at Mara. When exactly did you see him with it? Mara swallowed. The Saturday before you collapsed. He was getting beer from the garage refrigerator. It fell out of his jacket pocket. Colin looked up fast, as if hearing his own name in the memory made him responsible for what he had ignored. Tessa shifted beside him and pressed a hand over the top of her belly. Ethan pointed at Mara. You were half drunk before noon that day. Mara flushed, but she did not fold. I was sober enough to recognize a blue case with a crack over Thursday. Then Ethan changed direction. Fine. Tell them why you didn't want a baby. He looked at everyone else before I could answer. Tell them how you said children at work were enough for you. Tell them how you made me feel disgusting for wanting a family. He used my real words after stripping away their reason. I had said I loved my students and came home empty. I had said I wanted 2 years to breathe, pay debt, sleep, and be a person inside my own marriage. He turned that into a confession of coldness. The old guilt reached for me, but Tessa spoke before it could settle. Not wanting a baby right now is not the same as agreeing to be tricked into one. Her voice shook, but the sentence was clean. Colin stared at her. Tessa did not look at him. She looked at me. I need to know if this is what this family calls love. Ethan smiled at her with the careful older brother smile I had once mistaken for charm. You're exhausted. Don't let her scare you. Tessa's hand tightened over her twins. I'm not scared of her. Ethan had no clean way to attack Tessa without proving my point, so he turned back to me. Show them the pills then. Go ahead, make your little presentation. He thought the missing tablets would save him. The substitute pills had been swallowed or sealed at the hospital, and my body could not walk backward to prove when he had changed them. The hospital already identified what was left, I said. The report is in my purse. I reached toward the chair beside me. Ethan moved at the same time, not toward the papers but toward my purse and the keys inside it. His hand stopped inches from the zipper. Every face at the table followed it. I put my palm flat on the purse first. No, I said. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear enough that everyone heard the first clean boundary I had ever set with him in public. The cracked blue case sat between the coffee cups and Beverly's untouched fruit bowl. To everyone else, the split over Thursday was a tiny flaw in cheap plastic. To me, it marked the door of the room I had almost died in. Ethan saw them looking, and became the gentle husband again. "You're frightening my family," he said. "You're upset, you're medicated, and you need to rest." Tessa pushed her chair back, making the legs scrape. "She asked you not to touch her purse." Ethan kept his eyes on me. "I was getting her keys because she had surgery. She shouldn't drive." I said. "I'm not driving. Mara brought me. You reached for my purse when I mentioned the hospital report. That gave the room one action and one timing." Colin looked from Ethan's hand to my purse, then at Tessa's stomach. "Answer her," he said. Ethan gave him a look sharp enough to make him hesitate. "You don't know what our marriage has been like." Beverly stood and began collecting plates, even though nobody had eaten for several minutes. "This is not how we handle private pain," she said. "We do not corner each other at the table." Mara gave one humorless laugh. "He cornered her with her own medication, Mom." Ethan used Beverly's discomfort. "I didn't switch anything. I took the case because she was doubling doses. She checks everything until she panics, and I was trying to keep her safe from herself." It was built for his mother. It made him sound tired, responsible, and embarrassed to say the ugly part aloud. For a moment, I felt the old pull to explain everything at once. Instead, I did what I taught children to do when pressure stole their words. I made the sentence smaller. "Did I ask you to take my pill case?" Ethan blinked. "That's not the point." "It is the point. Did I ask you?" He looked around for rescue, and found none. "You weren't thinking clearly." "So no," I said. "I did not ask you." Tessa followed with another plain question. "Did you tell her you took it?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "I didn't think I needed permission to help my wife." Mara said. "You needed permission to touch something that prevented a pregnancy." Beverly set a plate down too hard. "Stop making this sound like a crime." Tessa answered. "It already sounds like one." Ethan's last reliable audience was slipping away, so he turned wounded. "Do you hear yourselves? We lost a baby, and you're acting like I'm a monster because I wanted my wife to stop treating motherhood like a punishment." He had taken the pregnancy I had not chosen and turned it into a child I had rejected. He had taken emergency surgery and made it into grief he could wear in front of his mother. My throat burned, but my voice did not. "You don't get to name what I lost, and you don't get to use it to cover what you did." Ethan spread his hands. "Then say it clearly. Say in front of everyone that your husband tried to get you pregnant against your will." It was meant to make the truth sound too ugly to speak. I picked up the blue case. "You took this without asking. You hid that from me. The pills inside were replaced. I became pregnant after I had said no, and I nearly died. That is clear enough." Mara moved between Ethan and the hallway. "You're not taking her home." Beverly snapped her name, but Mara did not look away from him. He reached for her purse. "He doesn't get a private car ride." Ethan's face reddened. "You are not deciding my marriage." "Neither are you," Tessa said. Colin picked up my purse and handed it across the table, careful and awkward, as if returning something that should never have left my control. My purse was in my hands. My keys were in my hands. My exit was in my hands. Beverly whispered, "This will destroy him." She meant Ethan's reputation, the clean version of him she had polished for years. "No," I said. "What happened in my body already destroyed something. You're only seeing it now." She did not defend him again. I walked to the front door with Mara beside me and Tessa close behind. Ethan followed until Colin stepped into his path. "Move," Ethan said. Colin shook his head. "Not while Tessa is standing here." Ethan leaned around him and used the voice that had once made me remember every good day we had ever had. "If you leave like this, you're choosing them over your marriage." I turned with my hand on the knob. "I'm choosing the only person in this marriage whose consent you treated like an obstacle." Outside, my knees almost gave way, but Mara caught my elbow without taking control of it. She helped me into the passenger seat of her car. Tessa climbed into the back before Colin could call her back. As Mara pulled away, Tessa locked the doors, leaned forward between the seats, and said, "There's something Ethan told me at the hospital, and I didn't understand it until now." Mara pulled to the curb instead of slamming the brakes. I kept one hand over my stitches while Tessa spoke from the back seat. "Before they took you into surgery, Ethan pulled me aside and said, 'If she wakes up asking about the blue case, tell her she gave it to me because she was confused.' He said it before anyone accused him of anything, before you woke up, before the doctor came out." My whole body went cold. Ethan had not invented the confusion story after getting cornered at brunch. He had prepared it while I was under anesthesia. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Tessa's eyes filled, but she did not look away. He said you were ashamed. He said you had been trying to get pregnant and pretending you weren't. He made it sound as if I would humiliate you if I mentioned it. She pressed both hands over her stomach. I wanted Colin's family to like me so badly that I let that explanation be enough. Then Tessa opened her purse and took out a small pharmacy envelope folded twice. Inside were 6 white tablets in a torn strip from my actual birth control pack. He gave me this while you were in surgery, she said. He told me to throw it away, because you had been taking pills wrong and the doctors would blame you. I put it in my purse, and I forgot it was there, until I saw the blue case on Beverly's table. The printed prescription label carried my name, and the tablets had the stamped code the hospital pharmacist said was missing from the pills in my organizer. Mara stared at the envelope. Those are the pills he removed. Tessa nodded. I think so. It was not a confession from Ethan, but it was the first physical link between his hands and the medication that had disappeared. I asked her not to touch the tablets again. Mara drove to the lot behind her building, and I called the hospital's after-hours line. The nurse confirmed that the substitute tablets had been sealed and documented, and she told me not to confront Ethan alone. She also told me to keep the envelope exactly as it was. Colin arrived a few minutes later, pale and breathing too fast. He went to Tessa first. Are you okay? It mattered that he asked about her instead of the family. Tessa showed him the envelope and repeated what Ethan had told her at the hospital. Colin's face changed before she finished. He texted me after you left, he said. He said Emily was stealing her own medication and Mara was encouraging a breakdown. Mara let out one short laugh. He lost the room, so now he's trying to own the hallway. My phone buzzed again. 5 missed calls. 1 message. I handed it to Mara and asked her to read only the first line. Her jaw tightened. If you keep acting like this, I'll have to tell them what you did to our baby. Tessa looked at Colin. That's what he told me in the hospital. He said she had been careless on purpose because she was scared to be a mother. A car passed at the edge of the lot, and none of us spoke until its lights disappeared. Ethan was not asking me to come home. He was warning me that he still believed he owned the story. I needed my pain medication, insurance card, work laptop, and discharge papers from the house, but the nurse had just told me not to go alone. Colin offered to call Ethan. I said no. I did not want another private conversation that could later be rewritten. Mara called the non-emergency police line and asked whether an officer could keep the peace while I collected medication and essential belongings. Before the dispatcher finished taking the address, Ethan sent another message. Don't try to come inside. I changed the lock because you're not thinking clearly. The trap had moved from words to a door. Mara and I drove toward the house while Colin and Tessa followed in his car. The pharmacy envelope sealed inside Tessa's purse, and the hospital report open on my phone. The front light was on when we turned onto my street. A cardboard box sat on the mat with Emily written across it in Ethan's sharp block letters. Not M. Not the soft names he used when he wanted something. Mara parked at the curb and walked with me to the porch. My key entered the new deadbolt but would not turn. Ethan had not merely told me to stay away. He had made sure I would feel the key fail in my own hand. Inside the box were 2 sweaters, my cracked phone charger, the shampoo I hated, and a folded note. Not ni can. Not ni can. Not ni can. Not ni can. Not ni cam. Not ni can. Not ni can. They're back the pungatukit. My orange pain med bottle is inside. My insurance card is inside. Saying the list aloud kept me in the present. I was not asking for a marriage. I was asking for the items that allowed me to function after surgery. Mrs. Alvarez from next door slowed at the curb, saw the box, and rolled down her window. She was 70, blunt, and impossible to charm for long. He told me you went to your sister's to rest, she said. He said not to worry if you came back confused. I understood then that Ethan had prepared the neighborhood before I reached the door. The patrol car arrived without lights or siren and stopped behind Mara's car. The deputy introduced himself as Ruiz and asked my name. I handed him my license. I live here. My husband changed the lock after I left because I did not feel safe. I need medication and work property from inside. Ruiz said Ethan had requested a wellness check and reported that I might be having a medical episode. I had a medical emergency, I said. Those are different. My voice shook once, then steadied. I opened my purse and showed him the empty blue pill case, the discharge summary on my phone, and the line stating that the tablets recovered from the organizer did not match my prescribed birth control. This case is mine. My husband had it before my surgery. The hospital identified substitute tablets inside it. His sister saw the case in his pocket, and his sister-in-law has the original pills he asked her to throw away. Ruiz did not decide the whole story on the porch, but he stopped looking at me as if I were merely a problem to calm. Mara said, "I'm Ethan's sister. I was at brunch when Emily left." She was clear. He tried to take her purse after she mentioned the hospital report. She gave him one fact and stopped. "Mrs. Alvarez added that Ethan had spoken to her before Emily returned and had repeatedly used the word confused. Ruiz knocked. No one answered. He called the number Ethan had given dispatch, and a phone began vibrating somewhere inside the house. Then Ethan's voice came through the doorbell speaker. "Officer, do not let her inside. She's unstable, and she may hurt herself with the medication." Ruiz looked toward the camera. "Sir, are you inside the residence?" Ethan ignored the question. "She took pills she wasn't supposed to take. She is leaving that out." Mara stepped toward the speaker but did not touch it. "The hospital identified those pills, Ethan. Stop performing." The speaker went quiet. At the end of the driveway, Colin's car turned onto the street with Tessa in the passenger seat, and the pharmacy envelope still sealed in her purse. Tessa came up the walk before Colin had fully closed his door. Ethan must have seen her through the camera because his voice returned immediately. "Tessa, don't get involved in this." The sentence told Deputy Ruiz there was more here than a worried husband. Tessa stopped beside me. Her hands shook as she held out the envelope, but her voice remained clear. "At the hospital, Ethan told me to say Emily had given him the blue case because she was confused. Then he gave me this strip of her prescription pills and told me to throw it away." Ruiz asked whether she had opened or altered the envelope. She said no, except to look at the label. Then she showed him 2 texts from Ethan sent that afternoon. "You did the right thing keeping her calm. I'll cover your car payment like I promised." Colin read them over her shoulder, and whatever loyalty had kept him silent finally gave way. "Ethan," he said toward the speaker, "open the door." Ruiz asked again. "Sir, where are you right now?" Ethan answered too quickly. "On my way home." A floorboard creaked inside. Everyone heard it. "Mrs. Alvarez made a small sound from the sidewalk. Ruiz knocked harder. "Open the door." After a delay, the deadbolt turned. Ethan opened it only as far as the chain allowed. He looked freshly showered and carefully composed. "I didn't want to alarm her," he said. "She is fixated on the house." I said, "I live here." He looked past me at Ruiz. "She left. I packed essentials so she wouldn't come in and spiral." Ruiz's voice lost patience. "Unchain the door. Your wife is retrieving medication and essential property. I will remain present, and you will not interfere." Ethan tried to object to Mara entering, but Ruiz said one support person could accompany me while Colin and Tessa waited near the porch. Ethan unhooked the chain. The house did not look destroyed. It looked edited. My mug was gone from the hook beside the coffee maker. My jacket was missing from the chair. My shoes had been removed from the rack. My work bag sat open on the entry table, emptied as if he had searched it and then decided he deserved to. I went first to the kitchen drawer where I kept my insurance card and spare keys. The card was gone. In its place was a sticky note in Ethan's square handwriting. "Ask me when you're ready to be honest." I held it up. "Where's my insurance card?" Ethan said. "I moved it so it wouldn't get lost." Ruiz said, "Get it." Ethan hated being ordered to fetch anything. He stepped toward the hallway, then stopped in front of me. "She doesn't need pills," he said loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. "She needs to admit she destroyed our baby." Colin, still visible through the open doorway, said, "Stop talking." Ruiz moved between Ethan and me and directed him back toward the living room. Ethan smiled as if the order had been his idea. "Of course, I'll bring her things down. She's weak." "No," I said. "I am retrieving my own property." Mara touched my elbow only long enough to remind me she was there. My stitches pulled as I walked toward the bedroom, but the pain was not the worst thing in that hallway. The worst thing was seeing how quickly Ethan had arranged the house for my disappearance. Ruiz kept Ethan where he could see him while Mara followed me. When I opened the bedroom door, the top drawer of my nightstand was empty. My orange pain med bottle was gone, So were my insurance card and the folder containing my work login token. Ethan called from the living room. She hides things and forgets. Ruiz asked where I had last seen the medication. In this drawer yesterday morning, I said. Mara was here when I took a dose before brunch. Mara confirmed it. We found my laptop on the closet floor under a folded blanket, but not the medication. Then I noticed Ethan's leather toiletry bag on the top shelf, a place he knew I could not reach without pulling at my stitches. Mara lowered it. Inside were my insurance card, the orange bottle, the work token, and a second sticky note that said, "She gets them back when she tells the truth." I handed the bag to Ruiz without removing anything. Ethan appeared at the bedroom doorway before Ruiz ordered him back. "I was keeping her from overdosing," he said. "She is turning everything into evidence because she wants to punish me for wanting a child." Ruiz looked at the labeled bottle, the card, and the note. "You reported that she might harm herself, then withheld the medication prescribed after surgery and locked her out of the residence." Ethan's calm expression finally broke. "You don't understand what she did," Tessa spoke from the hall. "Then explain your texts." She read them aloud, including the promise to cover her car payment. Colin stood beside her, not behind her. Ethan said she had misunderstood, that the pills in the envelope were old, that he had only been protecting me from my own mistakes. Each new explanation contradicted the one before it. Ruiz asked whether I wanted the incident formally documented, and whether I wanted to speak with a domestic violence advocate. Ethan laughed once. "This is a marriage argument." I looked at the empty nightstand, the hidden medication, and the blue case in my hand. "No," I said. "It stopped being an argument when you decided my no was something to work around." Ruiz photographed the notes and the items in the toiletry bag, recorded Tessa's statement, and arranged for the pharmacy envelope and the hospital's sealed tablets to be transferred through the proper evidence process. He did not promise me an instant arrest or a perfect ending. He gave me an incident number, returned my medication and documents, and stayed while I packed enough clothes for a week. Ethan kept trying to speak to me through the doorway. First he blamed Mara, then Tessa, then Beverly. Finally, when no one answered, he said, "I only wanted us to become a family." That sentence was the closest he came to admitting the truth. He still believed wanting something gave him the right to remove my choice. I left with Mara. Tessa and Colin followed us to the hospital so a nurse could verify that my medication had not been altered. The next morning, the hospital pharmacist confirmed in writing that the tablets found in my organizer were folic acid, while the strip Ethan had handed Tessa came from my active prescription pack. The police report became an investigation, and a judge granted a temporary protective order based on the lockout, the hidden medication, the messages, and the witness statements. Beverly called once. She did not ask whether I was safe. She said I had torn the family apart in a single afternoon. "No," I told her. "I stopped holding it together for the person who broke it." Then I ended the call. 6 months later, the divorce was still moving through court, and the investigation had not produced the clean, immediate justice people like to promise in stories. But Ethan no longer had access to my medication, my home, or my silence. Mara helped me finish my clinical certification. Tessa and Colin moved out of Beverly's orbit and began counseling before the twins were born. At school, I returned to a room full of children practicing difficult words, one careful sound at a time. I had spent years teaching them that a small voice could still be clear. The word that saved me was not complicated. It was the word Ethan had trained me to soften, explain, and apologize for. No.